so happy, again I can interview you. But this time, let's move on to your research. As we all know, and especially as your students, I'm very happy to read your book, the Buddhist Critical Thinking Skills. So today's topic, or today my question, will mainly concerning about first I want to about your research. And first I want you define what is Buddhist critical thinking skill.
Okay. A lot of times when somebody does their research, when I look at their thesis, they want to do like some philosopher and how his philosophy will help you understand the Buddhist doctrine of whatever. I guess for our talk here, I'll just use the example of like karma or something. So if you have like a famous philosopher, let me just pick one, like I don't know, Karl Popper, and what is his interpretation of karma? People, they describe these Buddhist ideas through somebody else's doctrine. Usually Buddhist people, they might define karma or any of the Buddhist vocabulary words, but they just define it how the dictionary tells them to look at it. But they never look at it according to how Buddhism would ask them to look at it. So I noticed this a lot while I was teaching earlier in my teaching career. Students are not using Buddhist skills, but they're in Buddhist studies. So I started to think that this is a problem. And it's not their problem, but it's something that I noticed they were not doing, and they didn't even know what they were not doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So in this sense, you mean the critical thinking skill can offer your students some skill to know, assess some tools from the Buddhism, and to solve the doubts about Buddhism. May I understand in this way?
I think your question's okay, but you said to help understand the students' doubts about Buddhism, and I don't think that's the purpose of this. It could be the purpose, however, I'm more specifically talking about some key term. So usually a lot of students, somebody might want to study 6 senses, somebody might want to study 5 khandhas, somebody might want to study, dependent origination, 4 noble truths. This is a way, the Buddhist analytical skills or critical thinking skills is a way to help you understand these doctrines. But see, the point in the past was students would just define what these doctrines are and just move on. But they're not looking at these doctrines for what the Buddha is asking you, how he's asking you to look at these doctrines. So the work that I do is asking you to look at these doctrines in the right way. So it gets pretty complicated, want to share a few of them.
So you think that most of the students right now, they are not look at the Buddhist teaching in a proper way, or they misinterpret some the Buddha's teaching. So your critical skills can help they assess the Buddhist teaching in a more proper or more at least more nearly or more closely to understand the Buddha's intentional Buddha's intention to teach that or that sutta, for example.
Yeah. Right here, for example, I don't have slides. I have slides, but I'm gonna redo those slides. But so I have to look at this 512-page document. But for instance, I have people who I want to come to the conference, but they say Buddhism is about meditation. If you're just talking in an academic conference about Buddhism, I don't want to attend. But if there's a Dhamma master giving a Dhamma talk, then I would attend the conference because they believe that meditation masters and like the practice of meditation, kamatan, that's more of what we should be doing. So I'm missing panelists because they believe Buddhism is the meditative pursuit, and if you're not meditating, you're doing the wrong thing in Buddhism. The person who is not coming because of this, her mother was she's a Meishi, but her mother was my sponsor when I was a monk, and our meditation master taught like this, and so I'm very familiar with this people putting emphasis on meditation as the dominant aspect of Buddhism. But I come from a textual tradition, and so I recognize the value of the text. And so when I ask these people, well, do you ever read the suttas? They will no, I would rather practice meditation.
So, sir, in this, according to your talking, but most of the monks, especially some, meditative practitioner monks, they always believe, we can through the meditation to understand more deeper and more profound Dharma, especially for the some, they're talking about Abhidharma. The Abhidharma doctrine, they said Abhidharma doctrine is based on the meditative experience or the technicals. So, in this sense, do you think your critical thinking should be categorized as one, or you can represent the meditation technique, or how do you distinguish from each other, or you try to distinguish your skills from the meditative skills? So maybe I'm wrong, mixed together.
In this case right here, from the Anguttara Nikaya, the quote is, meditation masters are those who dwell having touched the deathless element with the body. So we have meditation masters, those who dwell having touched the deathless element with the body. They comprehend meditation. They've experienced the temporary liberation of Nibbana. They know that Nibbana exists because they temporarily tasted it in meditation. They can validate Nibbana from meditation.
But momentary.
Sure, completely. Yeah, right.
Momentary state.
Right, but even in this momentary state, you can validate Buddhism and know that the truth of Buddhism exists. And this is, so having tasted it, having that temporary taste, you know that this is the right way. When I was a monk, I temporarily tasted it. I come from Buddhism. I don't need to have any other system in my life. So that's why I pursue Buddhism as deeply as I do. However, I also came from a text tradition before that, and I can't just toss it out. What if I'm sick someday, or I'm just making some excuse, but one day I want to read the book. But if you're meditating, and for my case, because I stayed in a cave, I didn't have a master, who do I turn to if I have a question? So the texts provide a valuable resource for me, because now the other side of this from the Anguttara Nikaya is Dhamma masters are those who see a deep and pithy matters after piercing it through wisdom. So if you have some complicated issue, you analyze it with your mind, But technically, there's really sort of like no difference. If you're meditating, you have some issue, even in jhanas, they're asking you to think about it. Even in vipassana meditation, they're asking you to think about it. You have your 5 khandhas, through the 3 characteristics, anicca, dukkha, anatta, through the 3 times. You're analyzing these things.
So, yeah.
So what's the difference? I'm saying there's no difference. But you have people who want to shut off the book tradition, and you have people who want to push away meditative tradition.
So in this sense, then we can we just according to what you said, we can say meditation is we use our mind to analyze our thoughts, and but as you mentioned, you from the doctrinary tradition means, but the doctrine is act as a guide for our analyzing.
I'm saying we can't argue with Anguttara Nikaya. If Anguttara Nikaya is saying and recognizes we have Dhamma masters, and meditation masters,
there are 2 kinds of masters.
We have meditation masters and Dhamma masters. Who today are these Dhamma masters? Not so much. Who pays Dhamma masters attention? Nobody. Meditation masters, who pays them attention? Thousands and thousands of people.
So
I'm not saying we have to pay respect to Dhamma masters.
So in this sense, you take yourself as a Dhamma master?
I categorize myself as somebody who would rather be a Dhamma master rather than a meditation master. But also think of it like this though. There's already like a market for meditation masters. Am I trying to take a cut out of meditation masters, donation money? No, I don't even want to do that. I don't want to sit in a room and teach meditation. I would rather give like a lecture. Now, after my lecture, if you go away and something I said influences your meditation, okay, that's part of the purpose of practicing Dhamma, and a teacher and a student. But the whole thing about, you've been in meditation retreats before. The Buddha never gave talks like that. Okay, everybody close your eyes, think about. He's never done that. So what we get in these traditional settings is not what we're getting in the text. So as somebody who reads the text, and we think that this is like the basis of people who have become enlightened over the years, I wonder if we're missing something.
So, as we usually, according to, I'm not so clear about other tradition. According to Mahayana tradition, of course, we always categorize the monks in the Dhamma master. Dhamma master be usually very good at the doctrine, and the meditation monks, especially Chinese Zen monks, Chinese Chan monks, they said they emphasize, they prefer that never get involved too much doctrines. They even said we transmit the Dhamma mind to mind. The Dhamma be transmitted out of the doctrine. This is Chinese Chan's it's a principle. But this is actually my wondering is, I'm still wondering, without the doctrine, we don't know how to meditation. Right? And then some doctrine also based on our experience of meditation to develop, such as Abhidharma. So I want to say, what I want to say is actually, personally thinking, we cannot divide this doctrine and meditation sharply, at least. Maybe there are some monks very professional at doctrine, such as Ananda, and some monks at...
I just thought of something.
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt. Actually, you said you don't think that we should separate this. Let me give you an example of why we should separate.
Please.
In Myanmar, there was 3 monks, very famous today. 2 of them I know the names. One of them I don't know the name because I never met him personally. I forgot his name. All of our Burmese students would know who these monks are. One, well, I'll tell you the story first. I guess the story is there was these 3 monks and they stayed alone either on a mountain or in a cave or something. And the purpose of the 3 of them going out together was to, without distraction, memorize the Visuddhimagga. Very, very thick, intense text. It's a very difficult text. I mean, but basically it contains all of the doctrine, pretty much all the doctrine. So these 3 monks spent a few years studying the Visuddhimagga. 2 of them became. One of them is Ashin Yanisara Tera, and he's one of the most. He's the Sitagu Sayadaw. He's one of the most important monks in Myanmar today. And the other, he's like an academic, but also a socially active monk. When not tsunami, what did they have? Cyclone that came and devastated Myanmar a few years ago. He generated a lot of funds to rebuild schools and villages and took care. He did a lot more with villages and immediately than what the government did. So a lot of people in Myanmar respect him for his dedication to social work. The other monk is Pa'ak Sayadaw. He's a very famous meditation master. If you listen to his Dhamma talks, his technical expertise is so high, it seems like he's reciting pages from Abhidharma. He knows this material at such a technical level, and when he does meditation, he imparts to his students these technical issues. And so these meditators become technically experienced.
This also resembling the Chinese Chan masters history.
Yeah, but none of them would have gotten to this level had they not spent the time in the text.
Is higher than them. The most of famous Chinese Chan masters, they have profound and deep investigation on the doctrine. I usually wonder when I also ask the old monks why in history those Chan monks they always encourage the students not get involved too much doctrine. I think that get involved doesn't mean you don't read or don't get it, you don't study the doctrine. Otherwise you should not attached to the doctrine. See, so do you, as you just mentioned, the Sayadaw, the very famous Myanmar meditation master, we come back to the same point. Without the doctrine, without completely or not completely, without deeply understand the doctrine, it's not possible a monk become very very great meditation monk. We can conclude in this way.
Some monks there might be a monk who lives in a village somewhere,
Yeah.
and they don't have access to the text, and he probably gets his knowledge from the mouth of his teacher, who got his knowledge from the mouth of his teacher. And so these monks probably teach things about daily life and how to extinguish negative desires, and probably how to cultivate the good desire, the good, cultivate good, and reject the bad, and the basic. They have a basic fundamental doctrine, and they just emphasize that, or they would emphasize that. So there are people who became famous without reading any kind of text. As you know, like some people can recite chants from, you hear your master chanting something, and if you're a new monk, you probably don't know what they're chanting, but you try to follow along in your head, and you don't get it right the first week, the second week, third week. By a month, you probably get half of the chant. Maybe like after 2 months, you finally learn the full chant. So there are different ways of acquiring the doctrine, but I think today we have no excuse, in this modern time when not only technology, but we have books, and in almost every temple there's a copy of the Tipitaka.
And another case, this orally transmission is also, we can say, is also based on the doctrine, because after Buddha, even at Buddha time, even after Buddha's parinirvana, and even it's not a short time, the Buddhism still based on the oral transmission. So this we can say, we can understand maybe if you agree, those oral transmission also is doctrine. Just not so is maybe is lateral in the way, in the more original way. It's just oral transmission. At least as you just mentioned, some negative desire. Of course, we always say that when we get freedom of all the desires, that we are get enlightened. So I think personally, I think this oral transmission should also characterized to the doctrine, some kind of doctrine.
The thing I was thinking about the other day was my primary work is the same. The Buddhist tradition says there's an actual text that these ancient arahants or whoever, the later tradition, put together. The text I showed you at my house, the Pati Sambhita Magga text. That's supposed to be taken from Sangiti Sutta. Now, I know that exists. I read it when I was earlier in my career. I read the text. I used it for my dissertation. But as you saw the other day, when I pulled it out of my bookshelf, it had a lot of dust. I haven't read it for many years, and you saw how much, and then I put it back. So I'm not rereading this book. I'm not rereading it. I do my own work with the sutta, and I'm coming up with like my own commentary and my own, how do I see this sutta being worked? Now, so when I'm finished with that and I'm done, somebody could compare Pati Sambhita Magga and Dion's book. What is Dion saying, and what are these ancient commentators saying? What is the emphasis of Buddhism 1,000 years ago when the text was made, or however long ago? And then how is Dion using the Sankiti Sutta? And I take myself out of this, but if I was a student subjected to the demands of the teacher, I would say, now weigh it. Analyze each text and see what the purpose of Dion's work is, and what is the purpose of the tradition saying. And then if you read the text, if I start from the Sankiti Sutta and I think Buddhism is like this, now I have a text. that is almost canonical, and I'm supposed to respect this text. But then I have my work, which is strictly textual. And I don't want to say scientific, but let's just say for the conversation, scientific. The book, the Patita Samhita Magga text, is written by people of like faith, of devotion, of saying the Buddha is like, omniscient and all-knowing, and they put these devotional
words or praise
into the text.
Into the text.
And I'm not trying to put that in my text. I'm not, as you know, I'm a Buddhist, but I don't need to put that in my text. In my text, I need to show the value of this document and why it needs to be read. We all have our different viewpoints of who the Buddha is, and when we do the chanting in the Tamwa Chao, Tamwa Dien, the morning and evening chanting, we're already paying respects to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. And so we do this. Buddhism got away from the intention, from Sariputta's intention and the Buddha confirming it, to all these excessive devotional texts, and to where it evolves into some text written by an abbot of some temple who's probably never even read the Tipitaka. And I just want to say, stop. Hello. We are Buddhists. Can we please read the Tipitaka? And some people have a problem going back to that because it seems like it would take their authority away. So if I'm just looking at textual material, it's going to take away the authority of the long-standing abbot who has a lot of disciples, who's probably teaching something that the Buddha never said. And if I say, the Buddha never said that, he said this in Anguttara Nikaya or something, it might cause some kind of controversy. But I think I'm not saying anything that the Buddha didn't already say. How is that controversial? He's the same person that we all bow down and respect. And I'm only saying the same thing that he said. I'm nothing. I'm just trying to do good and be his disciple and not worrying about what comes after that. So, like I mentioned, like a meditation master, he's concerned with keeping the meditation hall full of disciples. I would just be happy if I had one student. I mean, I don't care to have a full theater of students.
Yeah. Okay, sure. So as a student, I want to ask you, so sir, as a teacher, as a lecturer, or as a supervisor, how do you equip these critical thinking skills to your students? What's your plan? How can you make your students have this ability or have this skill in the research?
Example, when you first came to me and you mentioned, when I asked you what did you want to do your research about, I was worried that, let's say that I'm trying to make a name for myself as somebody who doesn't even have like a classroom. But that's the wrong perspective. I see, I study some philosophy, and I see there's a philosopher, a socialist philosopher that I sort of like respect right now. He's a psychoanalyst and a socialist. He tried to run for prime minister of his country, former Soviet Yugoslavian Republic, but he didn't get elected. So he's a famous philosopher right now. Travels around, sells a lot of books. He says he's influenced by this other scholar, another famous philosopher. So what he does is he goes back and sees that this scholar like criticize or approve of somebody like Karl Marx. And if this person is criticizing or approving Karl Marx, but Karl Marx was approving or disapproving of Hegel. So the scholar that I read is reading he's reading Hegel again after the criticism of Marx and after the criticism of his teacher. So he's trying to make a reappraisal of Hegel and seeing like maybe is Marx correct or incorrect, because this could change the perspective of communist, socialists, different isms if we have a different perspective. So I'm sort of thinking I do a lot of work, but it's not going really, I'm not saying it's going unnoticed, but let's say a student took my work and then used my work, which is just the Buddha's words, but just used my work as a platform to analyze something else. Like if you want to study nirvana, nibbana, but you study it through my philosophy. So you're doing like a Dionistic analysis of nibbana. Everybody knows this Buddhist. Everybody knows that, but you're using this other philosophy that, you know, first of all, I never created, because it's a Buddhist philosophy, but it's just a different method of teaching. And then see what you come up with at the end of it, because then I guarantee you would produce a book, you would produce a work that's not the same as what everybody else is producing, that's available in all of the bookshops and is at the reach of everybody. So many master degree students, they'll write a thesis on the history of Buddhism in my country, the history of Buddhism in whatever country they come from.
This is most theses. I go through the thesis list of MCU. Most of the students, they do the historical survey.
Dependent origination. It's like how many of these topics are the same? Hundreds are the same.
Yeah.
I've always tried to do something original. And if you were in the meeting today, in the Peace Studies meeting today, they were talking about how a master degree should be something like you should master all of the old texts already. You should master the old material. And a PhD should be you are contributing something new to the field. So it's like I told you the other day, it's like you have to invent something that never existed before, but it adds to the tradition. It could even expand the tradition in a certain way. Like, as you know, Theravada is so regimented, people are afraid to go outside of the box. Everything I'm doing is Theravada. It's just people have not chosen to do this, but it's still within Theravada. I try to think we're at the university setting, and we know these ancient Indian universities that got destroyed, like the old Nalanda or whatever, world famous schools, famous for teaching Buddhism. What are they teaching? You know, they had topics on logic, on this and that. These very high intellectual courses. What about we try to bring back this tradition? And nobody knows what it is because it died, but something that I'm doing is trying to revive a tradition that's kind of been stagnated for at least a few hundred years. So I would like my students to take my work and use it as like a machine to process what they intend to study. I believe our other friend, your comrade, she wanted to do something about happiness. So she could take my tools that I show in the text and look at happiness in the Tipitaka, but through my tools. Because the way she would go about doing it, if I was never her teacher, never an influence on her life, she would just look at it, copy passages, and say, happiness is that. But the tools are saying happiness is more than that. And you need to look at it in these other ways. But these are all things that the Buddha said. But these people are missing that because they're just looking at happiness. How do you use it? Oh, he used it like this. Okay, this is how it is. But elsewhere he's saying you need to analyze it, explain it, cut it up into pieces, into segments, really analyze happiness. But people are not using the methods that the Buddha wants you to use. And so in meditation, we're scrutinizing our thoughts or scrutinizing some aspect of our body. We're doing what the Buddha is saying for us in meditation. But when we do our thesis, we're not meditating with our thesis. We're not applying the same techniques with our academic work. So I'm not saying this is like meditation, but it's the tools that the Buddha used for analysis. How about you use the same thing for your academic work? It's very possible. And so I also try to, in one section of the work, I do the work for you by using the word progress. It's a very exhaustive study, and so I don't choose to analyze another word, but maybe in a year or so I might choose to pick another word. But if I condensed all of my work into a single term, like a vocabulary word, Dion, what is your work all about? Well, it's about progress, taking the state that you're in today and advancing to a higher stage. So how does the Buddha look at progress? And so I went through the 16 haras from the Netipakaranam and took a look at progress and how it's used throughout the entire Tipitaka, this one word. And that work with just that one word was like 30-something pages.
Yeah.
Which is like only a single chapter in a thesis.
And this progress as progress, as you just mentioned, the progress, actually Buddha's teaching, if we systemize Buddha's teaching, we can find the main knife from the very primary step, and then the progressive steps, and one step by one step, then reach the higher position. So, for example, we usually say we should purify ourselves. Like this is very basic. We're talking about sila. Then we get a concentration. We still our mind. Then we awake the wisdom. It means these three training already put the progress there. So okay, let's maybe this as you maybe actually you just mentioned after really master this the critical skills, or the students can take a can use the machine of this critical thinking. They can create something new. We usually as the first time when we hear the critical thinking, we always will resembling the criticism. So we always, maybe would you please tell, maybe introduce a little about this critical thinking, the difference with the criticism, because we usually when I was in MA study for the MA degree, most of one of my teachers said you should criticize this. If you disagree, means we usually give us a very average image. Is critical thinking is we are disagree with something or disagree with somebody. So I wanna you listen to your response for this
this criticism and critical thinking, because some people we always, they label you as a critical person, or is the one who always like criticize others. Maybe how to separating, or how to, so.
First of all, like, I'm not somebody who talks bad about people. Like, I don't really care too much about other people enough to criticize them for something. So it's not about criticizing somebody. I think I told you how that idea came about, but the Buddha was an analyst.
Yeah.
The
Vaibhajika.
well, also like he was a Vibhajavada.
Vibhajavada. He named himself
Right.
as an analyst
Right.
in Anguttara Nikaya.
Yeah. So what this means is he's somebody who divides something up into parts. Now, he did that with the 5 khandhas. You have no self, but you have form, you have body, and you have
4 elements.
rupa, vedana, vinyana, sanya, sankhara. So you have these 5 aggregates. That's what you have. He divided you into 5 components. There's also the famous analogy of the chariot. Is one piece the chariot? No, it's not. It's the wheel. But if you put the wheel and the axle and the other wheel and the platform, put it together, you put these pieces together, then it's something that you can recognize. So that's all that this is. It's asking you to look at these little components that you wouldn't necessarily look at, and then you can find the value. Or it's like you're making a big soup, and you put a lot of different vegetables, a lot of spices into the soup, and if I'm just the customer, I don't care what the soup is, I just want the delicious hot soup, please give me a bowl. So you give me a bowl of soup, and I think, oh wow, I can taste some onions, oh wait, I can taste some garlic, oh wait, I can taste some lemongrass, tomatoes. And so when you have more experience with tasting the soup, you can taste the different components, and you can see what this is really made up with. And this is what the Buddha is asking you. He's asking you, like, let's say you want to look at happiness. Happiness is just not feeling good and having a smile on your face. Let's look at
Means we have to divide the happiness and do the analyze.
And also, like, you're probably only happy because you just got done crying and had a big sad thing, and so you recognize you're happy because you had this sadness. So you have to look at a lot of different things. None of that is negative, like critical. None of this is like a negative thing.
Nothing is about the negative.
So, like, unfortunately, when my book got translated into Thai, the proposal to the Thai committee, they translated as Buddhist negative thinking skills instead of Buddhist like critical or analytical thinking skills. They mistranslated it to mean negative thinking skills, and so the document's been stalled in the committee for a while.
I'm very much thank you, sir. Actually, this only interview is quite far from enough to really understand your profound research, and especially without reading or repeatedly reading your books. For me, as your students, I can say I still outside the door to get
get myself to completely understand. Especially, I'm still far away from master the machine. Just to mention, So
Here's one valuable piece of things of how, like, if you understand the components, how valuable the skills could be. Buddhaghosa, the famous commentator, the fable, the myth is that he wrote the Visuddhimagga in one night, and then
they
stole it, and then he rewrote it.
Somebody
again.
rewrote it again. More than 5 times, I think.
How could
3 times then?
How could he do this? It's so simple. He took Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. Now, what is the characteristic, function, manifestation, proximate cause of Sila? What is the characteristic, function, manifestation, proximate cause of Samadhi? What is the characteristic, function, manifestation, proximate cause of Panya? So you have 3 main chapters. You divide it into 4 sections. The characteristic, function, manifestation. Produce a document that nobody else in Buddhist studies has done. You've done a more original work because I've given you these tools to do something that these other professors at these other universities, they've never done.
Thank you very much. And also very much thank you to accept today our interview again, and I wish you have a very wonderful and a very fruitful conference. And I also recommend especially the PhD researching students, as long as you have a good opportunity, I suggest you read it. First read Dr. Dion's book, then if you found it is valuable, then maybe you can approach to him. From a personal experience, I really found I can get something new under Dr. Dion's supervision, and actually this is the new approach to the Buddhism. We as a Buddhist monk, or either as a Buddhist scholar, we nearly need to not just always remain as the same approach to the Buddhism. We need it through another standpoint to invest the Buddhism. If I'm not wrong, so I want to conclude our interview like this way. I strongly recommend all my fellow researching students or my fellow monks read this book. Thank you, sir.